Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Spread your wings and fly. God be with you.
Where do you draw the line with a remake? How do you balance creative freedom and remaining true to the original? Everyone's answer is somewhat different, but for Konami, staying faithful was the top priority with Metal Gear Solid Delta: Snake Eater, the remake of the 2004 stealth action game that was led by Hideo Kojima. And not being shy about crediting Kojima and his team throughout, Konami preserved Snake Eater in a way that's nearly one-to-one, other than a massive visual overhaul. So while it has definitely aged in the 21 years since, there's a certain novelty to its old-school stealth action gameplay and spy thriller story that still hits. Especially with the way Snake Eater wraps up, how can you not be romantic about Metal Gear Solid all over again? If you've played Snake Eater, almost everything will be familiar to you. It's the same captivating story, delivered with the same mix of melodrama and absurdity to the backdrop of its Cold War era historical fiction. Its penchant for long cutscenes steeped in political theater is intact, alongside the over-the-top characters and cinematic stylings with a tinge of classic espionage drama. You can put it side by side with the original and they'll sync up just fine. The iconic gravelly voice of David Hayter as Snake lands with a warming familiarity.
Leave it to me.
Only he can get away with always asking questions that are just him repeating the last thing that was said over the codec.
Thunderbolt? Never heard of him.
Item boxes are in the same spots, and they'll still pop out of guards when you hold them up at gunpoint or drop their bodies. Despite the upgrade in tech that makes everything look current gen, the layout of each area is untouched. They remain broken up into their distinct sections, separated by brief loading screens. That's all to say, Delta is Snake Eater as you remember it. Going in, I was unsure about the Unreal Engine 5 makeover, and having completed a 12-hour playthrough and a full stealth non-lethal run, I'm still a little conflicted at times. Does that sheen atop the new photorealistic graphics take the edge off of the original stylings? Not entirely, but there are moments when its campiness doesn't land as confidently in high fidelity. There's something uncanny about Ocelot howling to call for backup, or the Cobra's inexplicable superpowers, which don't have quite the same whimsy when punched up. However, you couldn't cut these things and still call this Snake Eater. The trade-off is generally worth it because the jungles and mountain ranges look fantastic and give a density to these contained zones that wasn't as felt before. And in its prestige level cutscenes, the revamped graphics really pay off. It's one of those rose-tinted glasses situations where this is how I remember it looking when I was blown away by the PS2 version as a teenager playing it for the first time. But now, it actually does look this good.
I am the sorrow. Like you, I too am filled with sadness.
Konami put in considerable effort to maintain Snake Eater's classic touches by offering the Legacy-style camera angle that uses the old bird's eye view, along with the original control scheme. As much as I appreciate the nostalgia though, the new style is the optimal way to play. The over-the-shoulder angle gives a modern perspective that doesn't detract from the way it was meant to be played, which we already knew because of the other re-releases that had come out with this camera angle, including the 2012 3DS version. I also prefer it because you get to see Delta's newfound detail closer to the ground level, and it's been made less rigid and more accommodating by some new accessibility options. Even little things like being able to use the original UI elements along with the new style camera show it isn't stubborn about letting you tailor things to your liking. Unexpectedly, the most impactful option for me was the color filters. I played the entire game with the Legacy filter and found it much better than the somewhat sterile default look. As someone very attached to the specific color palette and aesthetic of the original Snake Eater, this was close enough for me. Perhaps the thing I enjoyed most about this remake was that I found the old school stealth action to be oddly refreshing. At a time when series like Splinter Cell, Thief, and well, Metal Gear Solid are largely absent in the modern gaming world, playing through Snake Eater tapped into that part of my brain again. Each section feels like a puzzle to be solved, where guards and terrain are your obstacles and your limited gear leaves room for creativity. I was also reminded that reactivity is a defining feature of the Metal Gear series. Whether I'm dropping dirty magazines to distract guards or popping out of a cardboard box for a close quarters takedown, that mix of deliberate decisions and adapting when plans don't exactly work out remains satisfying.
Speak.
The thrill of evading an alert phase while hiding within inches of patrolling guards matches the high of pulling off a perfect no-kill stealth run, and toying with guards once you understand their behavior can be as fun as going in guns blazing. I still hold MGS5 The Phantom Pain in high regard for its emergent gameplay, but Snake Eater's more contained scope does make for a throwback that represents what made Metal Gear Solid so damn fun to begin with. Snake Eater's camouflage system works the same here, so you can expect different uniforms and face paint to affect your camo percentage based on the terrain you're in. It was innovative back in 2004 and is still a welcome layer of depth to the tried and true stealth gameplay that we haven't seen often since, especially when it has a genuine impact on what you can get away with in different environments. Delta has a convenient change in that you can access camo presets by holding up on the D-pad, so you don't always have to go into the menus to make a tweak. The injury system is back, and although it's a pain to keep patching Snake up every time you make mistakes, it's on you to be careful and stay stocked with medical supplies. The hunger system remains an interesting wrinkle that's a smart alternative to typical health meters of other games, pushing you to hunt for food or find rations and keep Snake fed to replenish his health over time, and to make sure his tummy doesn't grumble too loud. These kinds of mechanics are common today, but it's interesting to remember that Snake Eater predated a lot of the survival games of today, and it's good to see these mechanics have aged pretty well.
That's damn good.
I appreciate that the controls have mostly been modernized to align with how third-person games typically play today, but the annoying quirks of movement and interacting with your environment haven't really changed. Having Snake stick to cover, make minuscule movements in certain directions, or connect on CQC attacks can be frustrating, even if it's the sort of friction I'm used to putting up with. The higher difficulties provide a fun challenge and replayability, but when I take a step back, Snake Eater is understandably not quite as expansive as it felt 20 years ago. Relative to modern games, it feels rather small in scope, and its challenges aren't quite as complex as I once thought, and that comes with the territory of a faithful remake. But even if shooting a tranq dart into every guard's head is the easiest solution, Metal Gear Solid is at its best when treating it as a playground for improvising. Boss fights are another area where Konami might have played a little too safe by not sprucing them up in some way, so they're a little hit or miss depending on what you're asked to do. There are dull ones like the Pain or the Fear where you're just waiting for a window to pop your shots. On the other hand, you have classics like the End's cat and mouse shootout and the Sorrow's novel meta layer that remind me that Snake Eater was thinking outside the box and doing things that only Metal Gear was at the time. And if you remember any of the old tricks and secrets from the original versions, just know that they all still work here in Delta.
Go home. Go back to your boss. There's no need to prove that you are virtuous here.
When it comes to the storytelling, it didn't really need changes because it's timeless. I'm a sucker for Kojima and company's embellished political drama, and with the backdrop of a nuclear arms race of the Cold War, inserting their flavor of government conspiracy is captivating to indulge in.
Do you hear me, Snake?
For all its stone-faced goofiness, Snake Eater has a story that hit in a way I didn't expect when I was younger, and after all these years, I felt a new wave of emotions revisiting it as an adult. That's due in large part to the enigmatic relationship between Snake and the boss. It's conveyed with a certain earnestness, leading to revelations that brought things full circle for Snake Eater and Metal Gear Solid as a whole at the time it came out. And it culminates in what I still consider some of the best moments in the entire series. Even twerps like Ocelot earn his respect through a rivalry with Snake that has its own little story arc.
That's major Ocelot to you.
And aside from the boss, Ava remains one of my favorite characters in the series, stealing every scene she's in and playing an important role of an agent you can't get a read on until the very end.
Bet you've never seen that technique in the West.
For as much flack as Metal Gear may get for its lengthy cinematics, Snake Eater is a focused story told at a fairly brisk pace, and it knows when to pull its far-fetched punches. Weaving in grainy old footage from historical archives alongside Yoji Shinkawa's art direction to ground its story is still effective, and these touches add texture to what's at stake for Snake. Fail and be used as a scapegoat for your government, or succeed and become an unknown hero. Both are tragic in their own ways.
They're just looking for a scapegoat.
With the inexplicable supernatural edge to its villains, Metal Gear Solid is a series best enjoyed with a particular suspension of disbelief. That leaves room for its cinematic flair, seen in iconic moments like climbing the ladder to an a cappella rendition of the Snake Eater theme song,
I'm still in a dream.
and pivotal conversations on a flower field amid conflict breaking out at the Soviet border. This is a series known for letting you infiltrate top-secret military facilities by hiding in conspicuous cardboard boxes, so no one does camp quite like Metal Gear Solid.
This isn't over yet.
Now, for all its adherence to the original, I wondered, did we need this remake? Is there a way Delta could have been a much higher elevation of the original Snake Eater? Yeah, I'm sure, and we have faithful remakes like Resident Evil 4 and Silent Hill 2 to look at as examples, but that's not what Konami set out to do, so I'm left to acknowledge the ways it doesn't quite hold up today, and appreciate the things that make it timeless. It didn't necessarily elevate my love for Snake Eater, but it did remind me of why I've held it in high regard all this time. While much of what I loved about Snake Eater is attached to the time and place of a boundary-pushing PS2 game in 2004, revisiting it through Metal Gear Solid Delta in 2025 came with a big burst of modernized nostalgia. It's not a particularly expansive or complex game by today's standards, and so parts of it can be underwhelming if you're coming from a more modern Metal Gear. But more often than not, it shows how good stealth action mechanics can age well, and the political drama with Kojima's signature brand of campiness is intact. To me, these are the things that make Metal Gear so memorable. And while some of it is eye-rolling, the emotional highs of Snake Eater's story still hit as hard as I remember. Part of me is still curious about why this was made if it wasn't going to come with more substantial changes, but if I were to point someone to one of the many versions available, this is the one I would recommend, whether you're revisiting or playing for the first time. Kojima and the original team may not have been involved in this remake, but the spirit of Snake Eater persists.
I have waited long for this day.
We will fight with you once more.
Executive Reviews editor Tom Marks here with Michael Heim to talk a little bit more about his review of Metal Gear Solid Delta. You've probably seen Michael review a ton of RPGs for us. Clair Obscur also reviewed adventure games South of Midnight, but then also before you came to IGN, you were still reviewing for GameSpot. You did stuff like Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, Nier Replicant, Half-Life Alyx, so a ton of experience beyond just RPGs, if that's all you know him for here. But let's talk about this specifically, and Metal Gear specifically. What's your history with the series? Why did you want to review this game?
Oh man, I've been a day one with Metal Gear Solid, and it was a really important series for me back then on the PS1, something my brother and I bonded a lot over. MGS2 is such a distinct memory because I remember that my brother bought Zone of the Enders to get the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo disc, and Zone of the Enders was great, but we put in an unbelievable amount of time into the tanker demo that came with Zone of the Enders before MGS2 had come out. And that's kind of like a microcosm of the MGS experience, where just like playing it over and over again, doing a perfect stealth run, also messing around with the different systems, doing like an all kills run, just poking and prodding at the systems of the game and how reactive it was. And to have been with the series since day one and seen the arc of the series and Hideo Kojima as well as a creator has been one of the most fascinating things about games in general. And I think that's when they said they're going to put out a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, like I want to be there for that. I wanted to experience it for myself and kind of compare my memories of it with what this remake is, and I think that was like such a fun part of the review process.
On that note, what is your favorite Metal Gear in this series and why? Why does that one stand out to you?
For a very long time, it was Snake Eater, and I have these really vivid memories of I got sick for like a week during school, and I went to Blockbuster, got Snake Eater and SOCOM 2, and that's all I did for that week I was sick. And I ran through the game twice and did like a perfect stealth run and experienced that story as a teenager, and it's like got me invested in like conspiracy theories and politics too. Like that was such a big thing of 3, was because it was embedded in history in a way that the other games hadn't been yet. But I think in retrospect, other than Snake Eater, I would say close second would be MGS4, Guns of the Patriots, or Peace Walker. I think, Peace Walker I feel like is overlooked, and in retrospect, I think MGS4 is the one that was, for me, like the technical marvel. Like PS3 pushed it to its limits, but also 45 to an hour cinematics. I just put the controller down and loved it. Like, I do want to replay it, but I think Snake Eater's still my favorite.
Let's talk about 5 a little bit, and specifically, like, 5 is a Metal Gear game in all respects, but it did move to this more free-form, open-ended format, and where do you fall in that? Because 5 is one of my personal favorites, but I know it's not quite what early Metal Gear was doing. It changes it up a lot in different ways, and that again was a little bit divisive with fans, depending on if you know, not better or worse, just different flavors of what this is trying to do. So where do you kind of fall in that linear versus open-ended spectrum?
I kind of share this similar sentiment generally that Phantom Pain is the best playing Metal Gear. A lot of people mention it as like, this is the best the gameplay has ever been in the series, and I tend to agree with that. I think overall, especially in the case of Phantom Pain, is that the linear focused structure of old Metal Gear also paves the way for its storytelling. And I think that is, as much as I love playing Metal Gear games, the thing that I always remember is its balance between political melodrama and just absolute nonsense, and no one does camp like the Metal Gear Solid games and Hideo Kojima's team.
Meant complimentarily.
Absolutely, yeah. I love Death Stranding 1. Trust me, I'm here for Kojima's nonsense. But I think that linear style that you see in 1, 2, and 3, and also in 4 is like, okay, now I'm ready to like put my controller down and watch that hour-long cutscene that I work for. That's my favorite part, and that's kind of why I lean more towards that format for Metal Gear in particular.
So let's talk about one thing that is always a conversation around remakes, remasters, what have you, revisiting old games like this, which is how much do you change? How in-depth do you change? How much is changing too much? Do you leave mistakes, or not mistakes even, but things that just haven't aged well? Do you update those things? Do you leave them as a piece of history? Where do you fall in this? How much do you want to see a remake like this modernize? How much do you want to see it fix problems with the original? And how much do you want to see it just kind of recreate that experience for better and worse?
I think it depends on what the ultimate goal is and how much access you have to that original version. And so that's why I'm even after playing and thinking about Delta, I'm still a little waffly on how I feel ultimately about it being a remake, because the HD version, the HD edition through the Master Collection is available, and it is a true version of what Snake Eater was. The faithfulness of Delta is one of the things I do really, really appreciate about it, is because the way that game is structured and where the guard's positioned and how they react and the items you use, it's all there. It's all this, the cinematics are like one-to-one, and I love those parts about Snake Eater. And so if the goal was to, hey, let's preserve the original experience but put it in a modern format, they've definitely succeeded in that regard. Resident Evil 4 is probably the closest parallel to MGS Delta, where that game is almost one-to-one as you remember, but there's certain refinements, there's new camera angle, and the game looks amazing. Other than that, it is the Resident Evil 4 that you remember. Same thing with Silent Hill 2. It's like these PS2 era games are getting very faithful remakes, and I think they're working out for the best, at least so far.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for chatting with us about your review of Metal Gear Solid Delta. If you want to hear Michael talk about another game that is, 15, 20 years old, something like that, just got its own remake, remaster, go check out his review of Off, which is a turn-based RPG. And then also, if you want to do another linear action-adventure-y sort of game, we have a review of Mafia: The Old Country. You can check that out as well. And for everything else, stick right here with IGN.